Hello, I'm Wendy Liebmann, CEO and Chief Shopper at WSL Strategic Retail, and this is Future Shop. This is where I talk to innovators, disruptors, and iconoclasts about the future of retail. Today, my guest is all three of those. My guest is Craig Dubitsky. He is a noted serial entrepreneur, that's how people refer to him all the time. I myself just say he's a seriously crazy person who chooses to take on huge consumer categories and reinvent them with his slightly crazy, wonkery brilliance. So anyway, welcome to Future Shop, Craig.
Wow. That was a lovely and very kind intro. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I should say welcome back, because when we first started Future Shop, I think it was about 3 or 4 years ago, you were one of my first guests. So I'm really delighted to have you back as you continue on your amazing journey of disrupting the world. So for those of you who actually don't know Craig, he really does take on these gigantic consumer businesses, not in a sort of aggressive way, but with his happy, bold, and rather sly, sly in a very positive way, sly, innovative approach to brand building at retail. And the secret to it all, it's about happiness. So officially, as of January this year, he co-founded with Robert Downey Jr., in all the press these days with all his awards, a new company called Happy Coffee. Before that, he was the founder of Hello Products, the oral care brand. When he whispered in my ear that his next new thing was coffee, I was like, interesting. So here we are. Here we are to talk about this Happy Coffee brand and your mission to, as you say, elevate the everyday with this seriously delicious coffee. Why coffee now?
Yeah. Well, I think this notion of elevating the everyday, for most people, every day tends to start with a cup of coffee. So I've been mentioning this idea of elevating the everyday for a very long time. And obviously, oral care, a lot of people start and end their day with that. I'm obsessed with people, and I think the bar in a lot of categories is pretty low. So what I liked about coffee was so many people, drink it, love it, in some cases need it. They feel it's fuel. Coffee's a great equalizer.
Yeah.
And people rely on it and love it no matter what their economic status may be or social status may be. So I wanted to focus on, again, a big category, but one where there seems to be a lot of room to do things even just a little bit differently. I think the magic comes in these little nuanced touches you can bring to things.
When you had mentioned coffee to me and Happy Coffee, you're absolutely right. One of my best moments of the day, sometimes the best moment of the day, is getting up early, mostly doing a little exercise, making my coffee and sitting quietly in my red chair early in the morning and just drinking a wonderfully hot, fragrant cup of coffee, flavorful cup of coffee. And I do think about coming from Australia and in a coffee culture, surprising to some people, they probably think it's tea. But, we have meetings in Australia. We say, I'll meet you for a coffee. And that's my philosophy to life, actually, is let's have a coffee. So I got that inherently. You've created something quite unique in all of this. Yes, it's the product and the package and the price, but there's another emotional quality. So tell me about the whole package.
Just backing up a step, because of who I imagine some folks in the audience may be, and things they focus on and language they use. It's very typical that we talk about targets and markets and, consumers. And I'm sort of allergic to a lot of those words, not because I'm not subject to the dynamics of, individual tastes and market shifts and economics writ large, It's just I try to simplify these things because we get caught up in the language a little too much sometimes. One of the things that struck us was coffee is a commodity. It's truly a commodity. I used to be a commodities trader. I've actually traded coffee futures before. So it's a commodity, and yet a lot of the language in the category talks about how unique and how special the beans are. And I actually think it was kind of fun to play with this jujitsu and spend more time thinking about how unique and magical individuals are. The coffee's got to be great, and our coffee's really great. It is. And we can talk about the attributes of our particular blending and roasting process and all that. We'll get into all that if you want. So the coffee's great, but people are more interesting, and people are different, and people are unique. So we decided to focus more on people than on the beans, not at the expense of the beans, and not at the expense of the experience and how we treat growers and all that. That's important, very important. But really, it's more focused on the people that are going to be drinking this stuff as opposed to consumers. So when we thought about it, we're like, okay, coffee makes people happy. How cool would it be if happy made their coffee? And then what would make it special and magical? And think about all the touch points. So packaging, absolutely, because design is magical and art is special. So we want to bring something artful and interesting and ergonomic and architectural and thoughtful into the design of the pack. And also, and I'm holding one up because someone might be listening, I'm assuming, instead of watching this, but I'm holding up a pack. But part of the idea was, how do we make something that's beautiful? So when you are 3 feet, 5 feet, 10 feet on the shelf in your store, you see it and you go, whoa, what's that? Absolutely. But let's say you're not at a store, you're not surrounded by a gazillion other packs. How does this thing look in isolation? What does it look like on your shelf? Does this elevate your physical space? Does it make you smile just when you look at it? Do you want to touch it? When you do touch it, what does it feel like? Do you find that there's a natural place for your finger to go or a fingernail to go to pry it open? Do they stack right? Do they nest properly? Like, are there other functions after you use this? Can we make something that was fully recyclable? So ground and whole bean coffee for us, we want to put it in these vessels that seal really nicely. So they just make a nice noise. You get a sense that they're pushing air out and locking in some freshness, but they're fully recyclable, even the label. So you can take this whole pack and curbside recycle it. Most coffee that comes in a pouch, those traditional pouches, those are all going in a landfill. So, because some people are like, oh, but you're using more plastic and plastic's bad. I'm like, no, because you can keep this thing. I could pack my grandmother's button collection in here and hide it in a closet for 100 years. I hope one day my ashes are in here, another 100 years. So it'll be terrific. So my happy urn, my happy ashes. So yeah, I'm creating something that could be hopefully not just sustainable, but all jokes aside about an urn, something eternal, right? Something you'd want to keep. So all that went into the thinking, and obviously where and how the coffee is sourced and roasted, that was big in our thinking as well. So it hasn't launched yet, but it will very soon. Ability to trace who planted your beans, when and where and how they were roasted and packed. We have a full IBM built blockchain that will let that level of transparency come through for people that care. So that's pretty cool. And then I think the biggest thing for us, because yes, we love design, and yes, we love great product, and yes, Robert in particular is obsessed in the best sense with delicious coffee. It had to be exceptional, and it is. But the other thing we were really obsessed with and focused on was this notion of what we're calling emotional innovation. Mm-hmm. And it's understanding, what's really going on with people. Coffee we got. How do we understand people better? So I think thinking about the fact that we're called happy and knowing that not everybody is, there was a healthy tension. I'll never forget when Robert and I were talking about this, and he's like, not everybody's happy. And this isn't a brand about unicorns and rainbows. That's not our intent. So we kept thinking about happy. My wife is a PhD in clinical psychology, and one day we were talking about happiness and happiness as an area that for many people is out of reach. And I was asking her about who in her world as a PhD in clinical psychology was doing really important practical work. Because I think practical is a really key word, given that so many people are not happy right now. The suicide rate in this country is the highest, I think, of a large number of other countries combined. The US is still at a higher rate. Suicide is the number 2 killer of teens in America after handguns, and quite often number 1 and number 2 are linked. So we're not the most happy we've ever been. So my wife mentioned this group to me called NAMI, National Alliance on Mental Illness, and they're the largest grassroots mental health organization in the country. And they're doing incredible things. They created 988, which is the 911 of mental health. Well, they also have some really interesting things going on. If you have an Apple product, SIRI, and you say, hello, SIRI, I feel depressed, just watch what happens. No privacy issues here. It's just, NAMI will show up on your iPhone. It's incredible. So we wanted to do something special with NAMI, and we didn't want to do anything that was performative. We didn't want to do something where it was like, oh, this is the cause of the month. No, we want to do something a little more holistic and evergreen, and also thinking about it as entrepreneurs. What could we do that hadn't been done before and that would be meaningful? So we decided to give NAMI a piece of the company. And part of the thinking there was we're going to really integrate NAMI into what we're about as a company, as a group of people focused on trying to make things better for more people. And we wanted to try our best to reinvent the relationship between entrepreneurship and philanthropy. And what better way to do that than to really get involved from day one and really build that into the DNA of the company. We wanted to bake it in from the get-go. So we're excited.
So many things you've just said there, which are so compelling, because all our How America Shops research, which you know well, we have been studying and looking at the number of people who put their hands up and say they either struggle with anxiety and depression or they're taking care of somebody that does. Our numbers are like 4 out of 10 are experiencing anxiety and depression for themselves or others. And that number goes up to 6 out of 10 of the youngest that we track, which is Gen Z.
Yes.
And so those numbers by themselves are just overwhelming, devastating, all the things you said. And I never take for granted that. But it's also, and you've always had this view, I think, in the years that I've known you, and certainly similarly with Hello, was the power of product and brand and community engagement around everyday retail, everyday categories that actually do have the power to inform, transform, guide, support, all of the above. So when you told me a little bit about this on the QT in the beginning, and then as all was revealed, it became not only very meaningful, but a way to really think about how do you build true engagement with people with a product as the lever or the connector. And so that I found particularly interesting. It seemed like it was the continuing journey that you've been on for some time. So the power of that, and then as you have given a share to NAMI of the company, how involved are you and Robert in that conversation about how that gets used or how you're supporting the communities? How does Happy Coffee fit into all of that?
Sure. Well, it's early days yet, so we're still working through a lot of the mechanics. But one of the things we're doing, and after spending time with NAMI and learning more about what they do and how they do it, we asked them, well, what could we do that would be helpful beyond this notion of, an economic stake in the company and our being called Happy and talking about NAMI? And they said, after, again, a lot of conversation, the number one thing that they would hear from people was, oh my, if only I had known about you sooner. What NAMI does is really, truly incredible. And people would say, I just didn't know. I didn't know that there were chapters all over the place. And that so many people, again, regardless of education level, economic level, this is a, it's a big deal, right? Your numbers bear this out.
Yeah.
And I think if it were an airborne contagion, mental health or anxiety, this would be well beyond pandemic level.
Yeah.
So what we learned was this was, to use marketing parlance, they were having an awareness issue. People just didn't know what amazing facilities and programs that were available through NAMI.
Mm-hmm.
So we said, well, what if we were to put information about NAMI on every pack we have? And they were, I think, very surprised. Like, you would do that? We said, of course we would do that. So on every pack, there's information very prominent. It's hard to miss. It's there with its own dedicated, panel, at least on the product I'm holding. Mm-hmm. And on everything we have, it's pretty clear. And there's a QR code, so you can get right to NAMI. There's toll-free number. So it's very easy to get in touch. And hopefully we're not just making it easy. The hope is we're going to help destigmatize, just even talking about mental health.
Yeah.
But then in terms of like feet on the street, hands-on sort of stuff, there's a lot more coming down the pike. And they have a lot of events, and we're going to be at these events and talking a lot more about this because it's really important to what we do. And then we're doing our best to manifest it, because some of the stuff Robert and I talk about is we're building a company. And when he and I first met, we started talking a lot, and I said, I want to meet your wife. And he was like, you want to meet my wife? I said, yeah, and I want you to meet my wife. He's like, why is that? And I said, because when you start a company, you get this really interesting set of opportunities that you don't always get in other parts of your life. So in life, you can choose your friends, but you can't choose your family necessarily. But when you start a company, it's like being able to choose your family. We thought we could bring some magic to people's lives again on a daily basis. And the other thing we're trying to do is make all this affordable.
I'm going to ask you the whole point about this isn't that this is some, I was going to say haute couture. I must be in spring fashion mode or something.
Right.
But this is not that it's some premium priced coffee. This is
it's a premium grade, because we brought on board an incredible group of people in terms of like coffee savants and real experts in growing, selecting, grading, roasting, packing coffee. The idea was, how do we make commercially available beans taste like specialty beans and price it right so that the most number of people could have something this delicious.
Yeah.
And that's what we did. But I can tell you, we have independent Q graders who are like the sommeliers of coffee, and the product is rated on a taste level extremely high. And I will tell you that Robert, in particular, we would have launched probably 9 months earlier, but Robert was like, nope, doesn't taste just the way it should. And I mean, to tell you he is discerning, he would try things, blind tasting. And he could tell you that like one coffee was from a higher elevation than another. I'm like, how do you know that?
I know you've been working on this for a year or so, but this officially launched last month, right?
Yes, literally 27 days ago, but who's counting?
Right.
Yeah.
So, and launched, I mean, is it right that you're at Target? Is that where you are?
We're in a majority of Targets with ground coffee and what we call pods, which are, Keurig machine K-Cup compatible pods. And a handful of stores have our instant coffee, which is really, really like, people are blown away that it's actually instant coffee. And we're in Sprouts in all doors. And we are live on Amazon. And I'm very excited because we have Amazon.com/happy, which is a pretty cool URL. So we're very excited about that.
So in so much of your innovation work, you've partnered with Target or you've gone to Target. I remember, I think you advised on Method and EOS and, of course, Hello. And
Boots, where you and I met.
Yes, exactly. So is this... That's right. Yes, I remember that moment. You see, that happy moment. And we said, hello. And there you go. Our vernacular of life, of friendship. But is there something about Target as a brand, that as a retailer, that fits with so much of the entrepreneurial work that you do.
It seems like it. But believe it or not, there are some other retailers we spoke with prior to Target. And to Target's credit, they moved very, very quickly. But you will see Happy and some other retailers, because one of the things we found is no one has sole dominion over good taste anymore.
Yeah.
And a lot has changed.
Yeah.
So, the idea that there's a tastemaker retailer, maybe that was true. I remember when Colette in Paris was, I know, right? I know, let's have a moment of silence for Colette. I remember when Colette was Colette, and it was the first place you could see the iPhone at one point, the Apple Watch, the only place you could see it was there. There were a lot of firsts for Colette, and I remember we had a Hello breath spray, and Colette in Paris was the first place that had it before anybody, and that was super bellwether, funky, amazing. I think a lot of things have changed, and certainly the worldwide interwebs have helped create accessible experiences for folks around product and brand, and the way they learn and share is very different. So you will see. I don't want to have any spoilers out there, but you will see Happy in many, many more doors very, very soon.
I do think
and that'll be great.
Accessibility, the multifaceted approach, all the elements that go into this make it feel, in its own way, in some ways even more than Hello, a very modern story, a very modern brand, a very modern story, the accessibility of a category that so many people engage in.
And emotion, and taking emotion and making emotion really part of the headline.
That's it.
Like how you feel. So other people talk about geography, our beans only come from this place. Well, it's mountain grown coffee. All coffee only grows on a mountain.
And I think that's the other piece to this. This feels very contemporary, very accessible, and very inviting in, which I think is the other part, particularly with that mental health component to it, and the embracing everybody who might need. When you think about, you talked about we're always talking about the future of retail at our end of the world, and the sort of cluttered coffee aisle. I can see this. I feel like it's a bit like Apple. It's the rounded corners. You want to. When you think about that on the shelf, and I do recall you saying this about Hello, this ability to stand out and talk to me as a consumer, as a shopper on the shelf. I'm assuming that was part of the plan here.
A tremendous part. As a student of and fan of people, and observing them all over at retail in particular, when I looked at a lot of the brands seemed very masculine. And you used a word that I love, which is contemporary. I've been using a word modern a lot. And I think both words are a proxy for feminine for a lot of people who aren't comfortable with that word. And I'm really comfortable with that word. Yeah. And I think there's a lot of sort of tropey visual cues, whether it's the colors, the language, it's bold, it's dark, it's rich. Like these are all, it's brown and gold and green. Like there, so, and there's certain brands that broke away from that, and that became a big thing, right? Oh, we're orange, or we're purple, and orange. That's great. That's great. But I will say, we looked around the category and we saw a lot of things that seemed very aggressive and maybe in some ways overly masculine. And they seemed like they were fueled by anger and testosterone and a need for more and more and more caffeine and energy. But coming up with something that was a little bit more feminine, a little bit more modern, a little bit softer in a world where it was like you're going to get kicked in the head by livestock. You're going to get shot at. You're going to shoot somebody else. There's devils everywhere, and skulls and crossbones and death this and death that. And it's like, I don't want any death. Sorry. Like me personally, like I'm happy to stay away from death in all its forms. All earned jokes, from earlier in the conversation aside, I don't want to be around that stuff. And I think for everybody,
Yeah. I also actually feel it's when I look at it, it feels very inclusive to me. There aren't this highly emotional occasion, however one uses it, whether it's Europeans standing up at the bar having the espresso quickly at the beginning or end of the day, or it's the latte, or it's it's just there's so many things that I respond to in this conversation, whether it's you or anybody else talking about the role of coffee. It has so much greater value to it. So that's why I was intrigued with the work you and Robert are doing. I mean, the logic, the question I should ask, of course, is why Robert? How did you two meet? And
no, it's a great story. It's funny because when I was first introduced, it was on a no names basis. So the first bit was, there's someone I know, and they're very well known, and they're really serious about starting a coffee company. And I know you've been thinking about this. Will you talk to them? And why would I ever say no? And I don't say really no to much when it comes to this kind of stuff. And I was like, I'm just happy someone thought of me, right? Like, wow, you thought of me. So sure. And it turned out it was Robert. And we had this wild conversation. And it really was mind-numbing because I was sort of expecting so it's, someone in Hollywood, they're probably not really going to be like, are they going to be serious? They're busy being, in quote unquote, show business. They're not going to want to be in this business. Well, Robert is, he's brilliant. He's really, really funny. He's so nice. And my favorite Robert interaction to date was when we were we're FaceTiming, and he hears voices in the background. He's like, "Who's there?" I'm like, "Oh, it's my daughter and her best friend." He's like, "Bring me over there. Bring the laptop over there." And I was like, "Seriously?" He's like, "Yeah." And meanwhile, like, no one knows we're talking. We've been talking at this point for like a year plus. So I walk over to this other part of our house where my daughter is there with her bestie, and he's like, "Hey, what are you guys doing?" And they're shocked, right? Like no one's expecting they're going to be on a FaceTime with Robert Downey Jr. on a Saturday afternoon. And they're shell-shocked and like, we're picking out prom dresses? And he doesn't miss a beat. And he's like, does Vera Wang make prom dresses now? She's doing some incredible things with wedding dresses. Like, what are the colors this year? And long story short, they spend like a disproportionate amount of time showing Robert, turning their laptop around, all the different prom dress, potential outfits. Right. And he's a doll. He's a very special, very generous, good guy. So anyway, we hit it off. And like I said before, if you have the chance to create your family and build something and really get to know people and create something where people don't want to be transactional, they want to join you. That's magic.
I asked you this 2 years ago when you did the podcast, or 3 years ago. When you think about the things to think about, I mean, you talked about people.
Always.
That seems to be the essence of where you begin everything. But there are other things, secrets to your success.
Wow. Well, the people thing is big, and paying close attention. And I have a feeling that's why a lot of people pay close attention to you, because you also have this ability to really focus in and pay attention to what people are sometimes telling you and sometimes not telling you. So keeping a really watchful eye on what seems to get people either excited or agitated, nervous, happy, to use a word. I just try to keep antennae up all the time. And listen as much as I'm yakking right now. Yeah. So that's the other thing. And it's always people. And the other big thing for me is I don't read as much. People are like, did you read this? Did you read this? Did you read this? I'm like, nope. Before this, you and I were comparing books, and our books were mostly about things that have nothing to do with anything about business. Art is everything, and art is one of the things that separates people from plants and animals. But I like to think that plants and animals are a type of art too. Music, design, paint, play, doodle, play. People do not play enough. Even if playing is doodling, doodle, like play.
Marianne, who's behind the scenes here, people producing
Mm-hmm.
this, was just telling me earlier that she was creating for our new symposium around Beyond Wellness, we're calling it, that Craig is going to attend on June 6th, as we think about the future of health and healthy life and all of those things that we want. Marianne was saying she was just sort of doodling with pencils. We were part of this big conference in Miami a couple of weeks ago called Cosmoprof, and Alexandra Chaliki, who does our retail innovation work, was so thrilled because some of the senior beauty executives who were on a panel discussion talked about you cannot innovate at your desk. You have to get away from your desk. You have to immerse yourself in the culture, the art, all the things you're saying. And some of the smartest marketers, brand builders, retailers I know do that.
Yeah, so I think that's part of the secret sauce is getting out and doing things that have absolutely nothing to do with what you are supposedly being, compensated to do, and bringing those outside influences into what you do, because you can learn so much. I mean, so much, and bring a different perspective to what you do. And that's the whole point. Bring a different perspective to things.
Yeah.
So,
and I do think you didn't say this word, but I think the curiosity you have and the willingness to say yes.
And be very comfortable. Yes, and be very comfortable with not knowing what the outcome is going to be.
Yeah.
That is really key. And while still knowing that in the case of Happy as an example, it's a business. We're employing people. We are taking care of people. We do things like, and I didn't get to really mention this about how we're manifesting some of these things around mental health as a company, not just participating with NAMI, but bringing things back to what we do. We have Meatless Monday. We don't meet on Mondays. We're recording on Monday. We can do that because we don't have any meetings on Monday. It's not that we don't work. It's like, well, what if Sunday night weren't dreadful? Because you're not saying, oh, God, it's 10 o'clock Sunday night. I have to get ready for work on Monday morning. We got rid of that. Now Sunday night is awesome. And Monday is a day where you can still do work when you need work to be done. But, if you need to go get your car fixed, you can get your car fixed. If you need to go drop your kids, you drop your kids. So anyway, walking the walk and talking the talk is really important. And I think it's hard to do that if you're not also able to play a little bit and stretch a little bit and take in some outside influences a little bit. And that's how you create something different. If you don't change the inputs, how do you expect the outputs to be any different?
Well, we'll hear. That's actually one of the topics we're going to discuss on June 6th about, healthy communities, healthy companies, playful, how do we think about designing for those? Because how else will we manage and navigate this slightly dark world some days? So not to go there on a day of happy coffee. I think you've given us a very clear map of where modern, contemporary business, the way it is, and plainness is done in the future. And I love that. I love that thought. So thank you, sir. Crazy, serial, serious, seriously mad coffee other person, oral care person.
Thank you.
It's wonderful to have you as always. We look forward to seeing you in the future on June 6th.
You're very kind. Thank you so much for having me. And if anyone ever wants to call or write, hit me up. LinkedIn, 917-392-1000.
I know.
My cell, say hello, and let's get happy together.
It's hard to recap what Craig says because he's so clear. It is not about a product. It's not about toothpaste. It's not about coffee. Yeah, of course it is. But actually it's about people, and it's about being curious, and it's about looking at the way people live their lives and what they need and how you can deliver that to them in meaningful ways. So for those of us or anybody listening and watching this, think about that as you think about where is the newness? Where are the white spaces? How do you tell your stories? As WSL troops at my end always know, when I say is the shopper in the room, that's exactly what I mean. Are we paying attention? Are we paying attention to what people need, where they need it, not in just a commodity style category or execution, but emotionally? And I think that's the piece that Craig has done so successfully over many years. And happy coffee sounds like a very happy spot for me. So stay tuned for more on that one. Stay tuned for June 6th. We'll tell you more about that as we go and our happy symposium. And in the meantime, we'll see you in the future. Cheers for now.